As I said to you at the beginning of Mass, there is a third story. It actually begins in verse 11 of chapter 15 of Luke's Gospel. 3 stories in a row. Those 2 that I read and the other one that we often call and misname, the story of the prodigal son. The gospel writers usually set these stories up for us. And by that I mean sometimes just by the audience that it's addressed to, you know where it's going to go. You have an idea of where it's going to go. They are actually 3 stories about the love of God the Father, his Father, the Father of Jesus. We don't quite look at them that way, but they are. Here's the issue. It's set up for us in the very first lines. Tax collectors and sinners were all gathering near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So, Luke says, so to them he addressed this parable, and there follows 3 of them. They're addressed to the scribes and Pharisees, but it shouldn't be hard for all of us to find a home among them. We go through the same kinds of moments in our own life and in our own journey with God. So what's the issue? Why are they on Jesus for gathering, especially at table, with these folks? In his culture, in the Jewish culture in which Jesus was raised, when you sat at table with someone, you identified with them. In other words, if you had a capital enemy in your life, you would not sit at table with them. You would never identify with them. When I sat at table with you in his culture, when he sat at table like he did at the Last Supper, like he does for countless meals, there are like 12 meals in Luke's gospel alone. When Jesus sat at table with people, he became one with them, they became one with him. It's what they knew innately about their religion, about their faith. Table was a place where you became one and identified. Why didn't they like tax collectors and sinners? Sinners, they considered people who broke the law. Just like we would break God's law, we're sinful. Same. Tax collectors got lumped into it because they were unclean ritually. They handled Roman money. If I handled Roman money, I became unclean. If I'm unclean, I can't, or you can't sit at table with me. Because if you do, you in turn become unclean. And there was a whole set of ritual purity things that you had to do before you could be readmitted again into the community. They were ceremonial washings that had to be done. Part of an intricate law system that would have defeated anybody who tried to keep all of it. It was so impossible. Jesus, sitting at table with tax collector and known sinner, makes himself, in their eyes, unclean. clean. He identifies with them. He becomes one with them. Jesus is trying to teach these very people who his Father really is. In their framework, God, in their mental framework, God is this rule giver. That's all he does. Makes rules, intricate rules, over and over and over again. Is very rigid, very unforgiving. Jesus encounters these people over and over and over again and proclaims the same message to them all the time. That is not my Father. My Father is a God of great compassion, of great love, of great mercy. That's why he sent me, Jesus tries to tell them, to teach you this. This is the face of my Father. My Father will be at the table here, not so they can continue to be sinners and unclean, but so that they can change their hearts and start living like my Father wants them to live. My Father will come to the table with them because he wants them back. He wants them in. He wants them to have a love relationship with him. This is the God who would send Jesus to us, his very Son, so that he could have us back and have us one with him. This is the God who invites us to a table all the time. Still asks sinners to come to the table with him. Don't you feel better? You should. We all should. We're still invited back to that table. Still wants to identify with us. Still wants to nudge us to get that relationship back, to get it deeper. If it was lost, to find it. If it's obscured, to uncover it. If it's cluttered with all kinds of stuff, to help us get it out of the way so he can have this active love relationship with us again, even to the point of forgiving any sin. Any sin. It's awesome. The best of the stories, of the three stories, in my estimation, first of all, if you were a shepherd and left 99 sheep to go find one, you would come back to have 99 lost. This is not a very brilliant shepherd, but that's how outrageous the love of God the Father is for us. That he would go find that one, whoever we are. Sweep the house to find a coin. Light a lamp and sweep the house to find a coin. You bet you would. You and I'd go get the flashlight, wouldn't we? Shine it under, see if it reflects something beautiful under there so I can find that coin again. That's God looking, seeking, searching for us all the time. But the story of all stories, which some monk in about the 6th century named all these parts of the stories, and he named this the story of the prodigal son. My guess is he felt like a prodigal son, because it's really addressed to the older brother who stands outside and won't enter into the joy of his father. And it really isn't about the older boy or the younger boy. It really is about God the Father, because God the Father is the Father in the story. And how does it begin? A man had 2 sons. The younger son goes to his father and says, "Give me the share of your estate that should come to me." You've got to be kidding me. How many of you would give your children their inheritance before you're gone? You might give them a little something. You know, most people I talk to say they tell their kids they're going to spend it all before they die, so there's nothing for the kids. God the Father is an extravagant lover of us. We get our inheritance at our baptism. We are given everything we need to lead a life with God. He freely divides up the property. The older boy gets the farm and everything else, the estate, and the younger one gets apparently cash, which he goes off and blows it all. All gone. He's in a foreign land. Read, he's in a space he should not be in. He should be in the love relationship with his father. He should have never asked for that. Goes off and loses all of it. And only when he realizes how hungry he is, and what he's really hungry for is that love relationship with his Father, with God, only when he realizes that, it says, coming at last to his senses. He wakes up. He knows what he needs in his life. He doesn't have it. But you know what? He remembers the love of his Father for him. That's what he remembers. That's what comes back in his brain. I'm a beloved son of God. I'm a beloved daughter of God. That's who I am. And he goes home. Goes back to that relationship. Makes an effort on his part to enter into this love relationship again. Now, you've heard me say this before. I love crawling inside these stories and imagining things that aren't there. And I've always crawled inside this story. And I always imagine that, what happened? We know what happened to the younger boy. What happened to the older boy? Well, he stayed home. Dad retired. Son got the estate, and he's out running it. He's running the farm, the fields, whatever they had, orchards, sheep, whatever they did, whatever they had. He was out there taking care of all that kind of stuff all the time. Dad retired, lived on in the house. A little life of a little more leisure than he had had before. And I've always imagined this house being built up on a big bluff because it says that the father caught sight of him while he was a long way off. I've always thought it's probably up on a great big bluff overlooking one of those roads you can see coming forever down the way. And I've always imagined that every day, every morning after he got up and had his first cup of Java, and after he had read the stone tablet for the day, he got a second cup of coffee, and he went out on the bluff. And he looked out on the road, and he said to himself, "Is this the day my son will come home? Is this the day my daughter will come back? Is this the day when we can be reconciled again and be one? Is this the day I get to love my boy again like I've loved him for all eternity? Is this the day? So he got up and went back to his father, Luke says, while he was still a long way off. He's seen him. His father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Notice, no words yet. All gesture. Ran, embraced him, and kissed him. Son says, this is his confession, blurting out his confession, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son." Oh, son, how right you are. You do not deserve it. But God gives it. His father ordered the servants, still didn't say anything to him in the story, quickly, bring the finest robe you can find, put it on him, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Let's celebrate with a feast. Because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. That's why we love the story so much. We can identify with this guy, can't we? We've had moments when we've needed to come like that. Of course, the other son's out in the field. He asks the servants, why is there music and dancing? Why a party? Why a celebration? And he says, your brother has returned. Your father is celebrating because he has him back. And he becomes very angry. Look, all these years I've served you. Actually, the father came out to get him. The same father who went out on the bluff and looked for the one boy now goes out and looks for the other boy who is not in the party. My son, look, all these years I've served you. Not once did I disobey you. You never gave me anything to celebrate with. But now when your son, notice he calls him your son, not my brother. When your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fattened calf. And the father just looks at him and says, my son, you're here with me always. Everything I have is yours. It's all yours. But we have to celebrate because he calls him your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and been found. Why these stories? Because that's how God the Father looks at you and looks at me. God the Father is so in love with us, he would come and look for us no matter where we were. He would leave the 99 just to get you or just to get me. He would. He keeps calling inside, come back, come. I want this relationship with you. You think he wouldn't sweep every inch of your heart with a broom just to find a piece of you that's been lost? He would. Do you think he wouldn't wait for you on that bluff, looking for you to come to that deeper love relationship he has? Do you think he wouldn't come out of the celebration to get you to come in if you're standing outside arrogant and self-righteous? He would. That's what he says to us. He's waiting for you, for me, for whatever in us is dead or lost to come home and to come back. Because that's the nature of his love for you and me. We're beloved disciples of the Lord, loved by our God, beloved sons of God, beloved daughters of God. That's what we are.